Would you turn down millions of dollars per year? All you'd have to do is surrender your independence and abandon your principles for the money. That's a devil's bargain. Sadly, it's one that almost all American colleges and universities make. But one college in America says no. Our college, Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College refuses to accept 1 penny of taxpayer money, not even indirectly in the form of federal student grants and loans. By saying no to taxpayer money, we remain genuinely independent, free to pursue our original 1844 mission, pursuing truth and defending liberty. Hillsdale has over 1,500 undergraduate and graduate students on its main campus in Michigan and its satellite campus in Washington, D.C. In addition, over 3 million citizens have enrolled in our free online courses, and over 6 million American households receive our free monthly publication Imprimis delivered in the mail. You can learn more about Hillsdale's independence from government, its mission of defending liberty, and its national educational outreach programs at hillsdale.edu/penny. That's hillsdale.edu/penny.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined today by Betsy Helton. She is assistant headmaster for the grammar school at Seven Oaks Classical School in Ellettsville, Indiana. Betsy, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Scott. Thank you for having me.
I want to talk with you today about leadership and culture, especially in the lower school levels. But before we do, I'd like you to introduce yourself a bit. Tell us a little bit about your journey to Seven Oaks, how you learned about classical education, and what appealed to you when given the opportunity to teach and work at Seven Oaks.
Oh, that's a lot. I guess, really, truly, like most journeys, this one meandered. And that's because it's this combination of unpredictable peaks and valleys. And, you know, I want to say that even as a kiddo, which is kind of weird, I had a knack for children. So I was 12, maybe 11, and I was babysitting an infant. Now, she was next door, right? So it wasn't crazy. I wasn't going any huge distance, but it just was something that was kind of inside of me. And so besides going to school and being a kid, my side gig was babysitting. And so you get to the end of graduating from college, I had about 10 years of experience working with children. But I really wasn't thinking education and kind of ended up in a transition to teach program. Even all those years did not prepare me, though, for my student teaching experience, and it felt abysmal. It was not at all like what I had experienced as a student, or even in managing these groups of children, not just one at a time, but I would have like 4 and 5, 6 children that all the parents would send over, and I would take care of them. So I really just thought, all right, I'm done with education. I tried that, and that was obviously a mistake. But in the early 2000s, my middle son, you know, we had an unfortunate experience. He lost his hearing. He woke up one day profoundly deaf. We worked through that, but before he could go into preschool, the preschool said, gosh, you know, we're not really familiar. Would you mind coming in and helping out? And I thought, okay, sure, absolutely. So that kind of reminded me of, gosh, something that I had been doing really a long time, and that was just spending time with kiddos. So then I transitioned from preschool, and I spent several years at a local elementary school. And these teachers, I mean, they were fantastic. They did amazing work. I felt so humbled to be there. They were smart. They had this perfect balance. They were firm and fair and fun, and school was hard, but kids enjoyed it. And I wanted to do more than what I was doing. At that point, I was a reading instructor. But my background, my licensing was K-12, and I was like, I just don't really want to go back and do licensing for elementary. But then Seven Oaks kind of came on the radar. I found them in the local, they were writing articles about them. They weren't favorable, but as I dug in and learned a little bit more about Seven Oaks, I realized that as I saw things changing in the local public schools, and those changes included an introduction of what we call the I-Learn. It's our state test here in Indiana. And grading schools. And so schools, just as my children were exiting public education and going into higher ed, were having to make sure students passed I-Learn or the schools got a poor grade. And expectations were falling, not just in terms of student learning, but I think in terms of character formation. And I was seeing something in the school that really appealed to me. I didn't know anything about classical education. I dug in, I did research, and I realized that I was like, I've arrived. This is the place I want to be. It's kind of like what I experienced as a kiddo to a certain extent. And so, I mean, sheer dumb luck. I can't believe Dr. Ship hired me, but he did.
Well, it's good for you.
8 years later.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
It was a blessing.
I mentioned we want to talk about lower school culture with you, as you are the assistant headmaster for the grammar school at Seven Oaks. What have you seen, or how would you describe the crucial differences between lower school and upper school students? And then for your job and your responsibilities, what challenges do those lower school students bring?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that actually there's an advantage to a grammar school. And the advantage is that the students have a more insular environment. They're led by, primarily a single teacher, with the exception of their co-curricular teachers. And so, grammar school children are young. They're not mature. We have a lot more influence, right, and a lot more, I don't want to say control, but we provide a lot more guidance, right? And because they have fewer liberties, then the burden is then shifted onto the classroom teacher. So the way I see it, the torchbearer for the culture it's the classroom teacher, right? So this is an easier task than an upper school, provided you have faculty and staff who see the good of what we're doing. And they believe in this mission, and they know it's worthwhile. Then these people, right, they're the pinnacle. They become the best, the most important keys to establishing the healthy school culture in a K through 5 or 6 classroom or school.
In part, good school culture depends on students recognizing the need to take part in a community and build into it. How do you work with younger students to make them more self-aware about that responsibility? Are there direct conversations that happen? Do you say, here's what we expect from you? How much of this is leading from example?
Yeah, good question. So, self-awareness, let's talk. I mean, we're talking about 5-year-olds.
Sure.
So. And sometimes you'll see these moments where a kindergartner gets it, and I'll say, you won't believe this, but there are adults out there who aren't as self-aware. It takes time, right? This is not a one-and-done thing. This is playing the long game and helping your faculty understand that these habits that they're forming may not bear fruit for many years. I mean, you could see things in kinder and first and second and third and fourth, and even in fifth. And then by the time the student reaches middle school or upper school, you're finally seeing a breakthrough. But it's really understanding that you have to attend what feels like insignificant things, like saying, yes, ma'am, every time, standing up and pushing in your chair. I mean, it's essentially habit forming, or forming habits, that is. And as you do that consistently, I mean, ad nauseum, it feels like, you overcome other influences and you help establish a healthy community. I think an integral part, too, within the grammar school is reaching out to your parents. You have to be bridge builders. You have to help parents understand and appreciate what we are trying to accomplish. So, from the grammar school teacher perspective, I mean, they've got a lot. They've got weekly newsletters. They have regular communication, both of concerns and celebrations, regularly telling parents, hey, I wanted to let you know that your son excelled in this today. That helps parents really begin to see what's happening and feeling a part of it. We also invite parents to not only visit the classroom. We have back-to-school days every autumn. Mm-hmm. But we have our parents in the school twice a week, every week, for poetry recitations. We have them in once a month for virtue recognition awards. Parents get to see what's happening. They come in. They see what students are doing, how they're responding. They see teachers talking to their students and how they're responding. And this begins to trickle down, carry over, so that they can understand the importance of establishing these types of habits. So really, the onus then falls on the classroom teacher. And you talked about or asked about, direct conversations. Mm-hmm. Yes, many, over and over. But I think the greater, you mentioned, I think, leading by example, mimesis, right? Monkey see, monkey do. Mm-hmm. I really feel that that's a critical factor. You can say to a child over and over again, pick this up, act this way. But they're actually looking at you. They're wanting to see, how are you responding? So you have that student in the class. You can see that the other students are maybe ostracizing mm-hmm. that student. You need to be asking yourself, how am I responding to that child? Because when you treat children with warmth and respect, when you maintain healthy authority based on knowledge, based on just the fact that you're older and wiser, hopefully, when you demonstrate fidelity to maintaining an orderly classroom, which feels so safe to children, when you find pleasure, when you feel joyful about your labor, this is more impactful than the words that you say, although you still should say the words. Right?
Talking with Betsy Helton. She is assistant headmaster for the grammar school at Seven Oaks Classical School in Ellettsville, Indiana. How long can it take? How long do you think it takes? Every situation is different, but how long can it take for an excellent culture at a school to develop? And what do you think are some of the signs that you've achieved it? Okay,
so at first blush, you might think, well, it's going to take a long time. But I actually don't think so. My suspicion is that it can happen pretty quickly. Know your staff. Know your teachers. Provide them with excellent support. Listen to their needs. Respond to your teacher's concerns. Have transparent conversations with them. Observe them in the classroom. Watch them in the halls. Get them habituated to receiving positive feedback and little course corrections. And you will know, are my teachers supporting this mission? And the moment you have a teacher walk into the classroom and establish this good kind of rapport, asking students to stack their blocks and listen to him or her, you know that you're there. Now, there are going to be outliers, and our school has been growing, and we're getting new families here and there. And I tell the faculty they have to learn the Seven Oaks way. and this takes time. But if you have faculty using the language of helping develop students' moral imagination, and they're really influencing these students, you will see students come in with and change the color of their stripes in a couple of weeks. So you can see the fruits quickly. It's really, in a grammar school, hugely dependent upon the health of your faculty. I think, and another sign, this isn't always, consistent, is the number of students who happen to come into an administrator's office. Now, this year, I've had many, many referrals and a number of suspensions, but this has been limited to, I think, maybe a handful, just 3, 4 students new to the school. Right, so first semester, it's like, okay, let's learn the lesson, and knock on wood, right? What I'm seeing is they've learned the lesson. They've learned the Seven Oaks way.
How would you say those students who make the way down to your office, how does the discipline policy at Seven Oaks fit into developing that student culture for younger students and maybe even for the older students too?
Well, it's the same understanding that, like our mission says, training minds, but we're improving hearts. So we're pointing our students to what's beautiful in them. What does it look like to do the right thing? What is the right thing? What is truth? Who do they want to be? Holding up a mirror, right? Whether you're 14 or 5 is so important. That's where it takes you back, right, to your question about self-awareness. It's holding up the mirror, but it's doing it, consistently, knowing, the faculty know the kinds of conversations I'm having. I'm following up with faculty and telling them these are the conversations I've had with the parents and these are the conversations I've had with students, making sure I'm following up with the teachers and making sure they're having these same conversations. And as you do, it changes. You're still asking a 5-year-old to look in the mirror, and the response is very different than a 15-year-old. Hopefully, more mature in some ways, right? But it's still asking them to think and not just, saying, don't do this. This is wrong. But that's not helpful. Students need to understand why, and they need to understand that they are capable. They have it within them. It just sometimes gets a little lost.
In addition to the discipline policy, there are many other facets of the school, right? From the academic program itself, to books, resources. How does the rest of school, how does the rest of Seven Oaks help play a part in the creation and maintaining the school's culture?
Yeah. Well, this is what makes this so easy. I remember the first year we opened, and it was just the richness of the content. And so I had these students, no one heard of classical education. They're brand new to my 3rd grade classroom. And we get to talk about, about ancient Rome. We talked about the Vikings. We studied light energy. We did experiments every other day. It's the whole classical curriculum that becomes the foundation for creating the culture. I mean, the stories and the history and the lessons are the culture. Little John weeping at Robin Hood's death. Almanzo, so frustrated with his cousin. Black Beauty, the abuse of Black Beauty, and then his redemption, all point students to what it is to be in the struggle of life as a human. And it does it in a humane way. It exposes them to these truths. It allows them to engage in this in a very powerful and meaningful way. And then it gives them the scaffolding. See, I see. I can be like Black Beauty in this way. I can be like Almanzo in this way. And it also shines that light on, ooh, I'm acting like Almanzo when he's not doing so well, when I'm doing, X, Y, or Z. So it's critical. It is what makes the difference.
I do want to ask a little about leadership and you. On the subject of leadership, do you think that the qualities that make a great school leader are much different than the qualities that make a great teacher?
I don't think that they're that different. The work is similar in that you must attend. It's easy to get drawn to what feels urgent, but you must attend to what's important, if that makes sense. So there's an urgency that you feel in the classroom. Oh, I have to get through this material. There's an urgency I feel as an administrator. Oh, I have all of, these kind of bits and pieces of administrative work. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to throw my own self under the bus, that I really need to attend to. But what is the most important? And the classroom teacher would be saying, it's my students' hearts. And an administrator is saying, it's my teachers' hearts. You're sorting and sifting and you're playing triage, and there are times that you can't do the things you want, but I've learned that you really need to do the things you must. And that takes time and settling and reflecting on what people need. And so, and the students are just, they're young people. So what do they need? And then if I'm beginning with that in mind, what do my students need? Then I can ask the question, well, what do my teachers need?
One final question for Betsy Helton, who is assistant headmaster for the grammar school at Seven Oaks Classical School in Ellettsville, Indiana, which is, hopefully, one that leaves us on an upbeat note. What's your favorite part of your working day? What do you look forward to each and every day at Seven Oaks?
The students, their faces, their joy. Even those that come into my office, I can't help just have a heart for them, no matter what. There is no student I don't believe is past redemption. And to have worked with some of these kids since they were in kindergarten and to see their growth, it's just untold amounts of joy. I enjoy them to no end. And I have to also, you asked for the favorite part. Like, throw in the second part just for fun. It's faculty. These people are remarkable. They really are. They work so hard. They do the work so well, so beautifully. They know how to make poetry come alive. They are faithful in their instruction, and they are what is making this school such a beautiful place to be.
Betsy Helton, assistant headmaster for the grammar school at Seven Oaks Classical School in Ellettsville, Indiana. Betsy, thank you once again for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Scott, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K12. Hillsdale_K12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.